Hi guys, it's SkintBoot here, and today what I'm going to be bringing you guys is a No Man's Sky video. And in today's video, what I'm going to be looking at is the likelihood of VR being supported by No Man's Sky, either in the upcoming 1.4 or 1.5 update, or somewhere else further down the line. Now, I bring up this topic because it's a debate which has been brought up a lot since No Man's Sky first released, and especially recently with talks of a new update, of an ARG, things like that. It's always a topic which comes up, and especially on Discord, a lot of people always debate about it. So today, I just want to talk about this, give my opinion on it, but also look at actual facts and evidence to show both sides of the argument. So with all of that said and done, please do sit back and relax. Let's get started. Okay, so I want to start off with the evidence to suggest that VR is actually a possibility in No Man's Sky. Now, this can include things said from Sean Murray himself in the past, videos, or really just common sense. Now, the first bit of evidence we have is probably the most ambiguous and, depending on how you look at it, the most insignificant, but it's still worth bringing up nonetheless. There was a video which was tweeted out by someone which I follow on Twitter, who's essentially like a No Man's Sky community member, and he replied to this old video from another account that somehow got a short clip of a developer in the Hello Game Studios playing with a Oculus Rift dev kit. Now, this was all the way back in 2014. I'd never seen this clip before, and this is why I thought I'd bring it up, because chances are not a lot of people have actually seen it. But it is just essentially a dev with a Oculus Rift on, prancing around the room looking really fucking happy, and if you look closely, you can actually see Sean Murray in the background, which is really, really cute. Now, on the surface, this obviously doesn't really mean a lot. I mean, we don't even know what the guy was playing, but what this tweet does show is that Hello Games are aware of VR. Obviously, if they're experimenting with an Oculus Rift in their studios, this could mean either they are just pissing around in VR as much as you could in 2014, or they were perhaps testing something in No Man's Sky, maybe with virtual reality. It's really up to you what you want to believe with this. I mean, there is no way of knowing for sure. We don't know if this has any relation to No Man's Sky. It's extremely likely it doesn't, especially since it was 2014 and the game was still likely being developed. And also, there are some small things with how the dev is holding an Xbox 360 controller, and obviously No Man's Sky isn't on the Xbox 360. And this is going to sound like a bit of me throwing shade right now, but he looks way too happy and way too excited to be just walking around the fucking planet. No offense, but he looks like he's having a blast, and to be honest, I've never looked like that when I'm playing No Man's Sky. It's much more of a relaxed, chilled experience. It's up to you what you want to interpret from this. All it does show is that they have experimented with virtual reality in their studios, whether that be for another game, they could be playing fucking Joe Danger or something, or perhaps it was No Man's Sky related, completely up for debate. Now, the next piece of evidence which we have is a load more useful, and this is because it's a quote from Sean Murray himself. Now, at the start of 2016, IGN interviewed Sean Murray about the possibility of virtual reality and how it could maybe see a feature in No Man's Sky. And Sean Murray said the following: "I think VR in general is incredibly exciting. There's this huge opportunity for playing a game normally, but then also being able to have those really intense moments within a game. If it was No Man's Sky, if such a thing existed, being able to find a planet that you really loved and then being able to see in VR, I think something like that would be incredibly cool." Now, bearing in mind this quote was from the beginning of 2016, so it's a little bit closer to release than this old video from 2014. However, this isn't exactly solid proof that VR will ever be a reality in No Man's Sky, mainly due to the fact that Sean is promising nothing. He's quite literally acknowledging the fact that VR would fit No Man's Sky, it would fit the aesthetic of it, with such beautiful views like he's saying with this planet, and being able to experience it in virtual reality will kind of feel a lot more real, a lot more like you're connected to it. But this doesn't mean anything. As I said, this is quite literally the developers showing awareness of how incredible No Man's Sky could be in virtual reality. The one thing which we do get from this though is that they have at least considered virtual reality. At least back in 2016, it seems like an option which they were willing to take, and perhaps this means that for the future they may investigate it a little bit more. And there's just one final thing which I want to touch on before I move on to the evidence against virtual reality, and that is PlayStation VR. So when No Man's Sky released, PlayStation VR was not a thing. VR before this was quite literally the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, two pieces of technology which were only on PC. PlayStation VR was really the first of its kind to bring virtual reality into a much more mainstream market. This is mainly due to the fact that VR in general is quite a niche market. It's nowhere near mainstream due to the fact that it is not simple. It's expensive, it's complex to set up, you need a big beefy computer, you need knowledge of technology in order to get an HTC Vive to work. It's a big fucking risk putting all this money into it with a big fat computer, the actual Vive itself which could be £600 upwards, drilling sensors into your walls. It's a big ass commitment and some people just don't want this. So PlayStation VR essentially took the virtual reality formula but just made it more mainstream by putting it with the PlayStation 4, which is obviously a console. So with No Man's Sky being a PlayStation 4 exclusive, we can't talk about VR without talking about PlayStation VR. And this could be seen as a selling point for virtual reality with consoles because unlike the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, PlayStation VR is a load more accessible. The market is less isolated. There are a lot more people out there with PlayStation VR headsets than there are with HTC Vives. Those that are, say, maybe a bit older, those with families or maybe younger kids, consoles are always going to be the better option. And for this, VR is going to be like this little thing which they literally plug into the console. You don't have to piss around with settings, you don't have to worry about crashing, anything like that. It's easy, and this is why No Man's Sky could flourish in virtual reality. It's a PlayStation exclusive, therefore it's a selling point for PlayStation VR. If their relationship with Sony is still intact, then really it works both ways. Okay, so now I want to move on to the evidence against virtual reality. Now the first thing which I want to touch on is probably the most obvious, and this is the fact that at this point in time, virtual reality is not a focus for Hello Games. Virtual reality in general is a gimmick. At the end of the day, it's something which you buy for your 9-year-old son to play Batman VR or something like that. He absolutely loves it for like, I don't know, a week and a bit, and then after that, it's collecting dust. He doesn't fucking play with it. You're sad because you spent 85% of your paycheck on it. And with No Man's Sky, it would make sense for Hello Games to actually focus on the game itself than adding gimmicks and extra shit to it, which at this point in time, it just doesn't need. Their focus, which is very evident with the free updates they're bringing out to the game, is to make the title identical to the one which we were sold pre-release. If they were to suddenly bring out a VR game mode for No Man's Sky or what have you, I think it would actually annoy more people than would make them happy. They sort of want the game to be incredible, to be game of the century before they slap on their Vive and get lost in it forever. In that aspect, I just don't think it's something which Hello Games are going to be focusing on, at least until the game is basically the game we were sold. Maybe then it may be considered. Another big thing which I want to touch on is how virtual reality on PC is an extremely isolated market, and No Man's Sky virtual reality on PC would only benefit a tiny portion of the player base. Now this is just mainly due to the fact that VR headsets for PC are just not accessible. You need, first of all, a big beefy computer. You need to actually buy the Vive itself, which is probably £600. A Rift with touch controllers is considerably cheaper, as in £350, about the same price as a PlayStation VR headset actually. But this isn't factoring the cost of building a big fat computer with at least a 970, which is going to set you back probably about £150. Then you got to get the processor, you got to get the RAM, you got to get everything like that. And then at the end of the day, you do still need a big fat room to piss around in. You need corners to drill shit in, or you need a desk to balance sensors on. There's so much. It's such a massive commitment, and that is why it isn't mainstream. Only a very small portion of of gamers own an HTC Vive. They're incredible to experience, but no one can afford them. They're too much of a serious commitment at this point in time, especially with technology changing all the time, which means they're only going to get better. It's just a very hard market to get into, and it would not really make any sense to focus on a really small percentage of the player base. Another thing which I want to touch on, which I think a lot of people actually overlook, is the fact that No Man's Sky as a game would have to be fundamentally changed to fit virtual reality. Now this is evident with unofficial mods that have existed since the game's launch that basically allow users to use their virtual reality headset with No Man's Sky, and people have reported that this mod is incredibly nausea inducing and it does require someone with a strong stomach. It's very motion sickness based, it's just a bit all over the place, and this just means that for Hello Games to actually make No Man's Sky in VR, they would have to change the game. They would have to actually spend development time to rework the game, and this would not make sense when their focus should be on updates, giving us content. If they're getting involved with the ARG or they're doing the community shit, there's just so much going on. It would be a waste of development time. In the end, it won't benefit them that much. Now this is the final thing which I want to talk about, because no one would buy a VR headset because, oh, No Man's Sky works with it. Maybe at the beginning there might be a small increase, but as the gimmick dies, as a novelty wears off, it's not going to be like people are going to be consistently buying No Man's Sky over and over again, or a PS VR over and over again. After about a month, people would have experienced it, they would have moved on, so financially it doesn't benefit Hello Games all that much. So with all of that said, how likely is it that virtual reality will be put into No Man's Sky? For PlayStation, I think it is quite likely, just due to the fact that an exclusive that has a VR headset that's quite accessible, mixed with a fairly casual game, it's a perfect formula. But for PC, when we're knocking around with Vives and Rifts and stuff like that, the market is simply too niche and isolated to actually be worth the time and money and effort that's put into it to get it to work. So for PC, no. PlayStation, I would say it definitely is a possibility, but only when the game is up to standards seen pre-release. So that is what I think on the matter, but I want to know what you think on the matter. So please do let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. It really does mean a lot. If you did enjoy it, then please do feel free to leave a like on it. And if you guys could also subscribe to MZK, then that'd be absolutely fantastic. And as always, I will see you guys on my next video. This is SkintBoot, signing out.